Good evening, and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Kimon Hatza, and I'm a business attorney and partner at Millcrest Law in Radnor, Pennsylvania. I focus my practice in the areas of life sciences, healthcare, and technology. Tonight, we're continuing our special series on life sciences leaders in the Delaware Valley. Before we get started, I would like to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences, healthcare, or technology companies or matters are discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the show is pre-recorded and shown at a later time, some of the information discussed may no longer be current. You should always speak with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm happy to have with me this evening my co-host, Charlie Huntington. Charlie is the chairperson for public relations at Pennsylvania Bio. And Pennsylvania Bio, of course, is the voice of advancement for biosciences in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Charlie, thanks for co-hosting.
Thanks, Kimon.
I can't believe it, but we're at the end of the year, and we're only now a couple months from what is typically one of the biggest events on Pennsylvania Bio's calendar, the annual dinner. You and I both have attended these things for many years. They're extremely well attended from everybody in and around the life sciences industry in the region, and always great guests and great speakers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the annual dinner and to the extent you have the information, maybe give us a bit of a preview for this year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kimon. I like to believe that all of Pennsylvania Bio's programs are top-notch. They're really two programs a year, though, that if you're part of the community, we would recommend that you make an appearance at. One is the annual dinner in the spring, and then there's a fall symposium, which is another not-to-miss event. This year we also have the International Bio Show coming in June, which will be about 18,000 people in Philadelphia. So we're privileged. We haven't hosted that show as a region for 10 years, so we're privileged that that show is coming back to Philadelphia, okay. And all the business connections that come along with it. But specifically to answer your question, on March 12th, down at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, there will be the spring dinner, and typically that's about 1,000 people. The recent awards have been Charlie Dent, U.S. Congressman, Jim Gerlach. He has spoken, Allison Swartz, the late Arlen Specter. We've given him an award. Paul Toohey from Invisible Sentinel was our Hubert J. Schumacher Leadership Award winner last year. So it's a great place for connections to be made and maintained, and it really is an event not to be missed. Absolutely.
I know I'm looking forward to it. Well, we have an exciting show this evening, an exciting new technology that's been actually spun out of Drexel University, and I'm anxious to get to our guest for this evening, so Perfect. I'm going to do that.
Great.
Before I introduce our guest, however, I do want to let our viewers know that if you have a question that you would like us to answer on a future show and you want to send us that question, this is how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Now it's with great pleasure that I introduce our special guest this evening, Jim Harris. Jim is a serial entrepreneur with more than 30 years of experience in the life sciences industry. His expertise is in business creation, commercialization, brand marketing, and sales leadership. He currently serves as the CEO of PolyCore Therapeutics, a spin-out from Drexel University focused on the development of a treatment for Parkinson's disease, and the company that we're going to be spending some time discussing this evening. But Jim also is the CEO of Lignamed LLC, which is a spin-out of the University of Pennsylvania, focused on the development of an agent to improve outcomes in the treatment of chest cancers. In addition, he's the co-founder and chief operating officer of FHK LLC, a company focused on acquisition and commercialization of specialty pharmaceutical products. In addition, he's the founder and CEO of BioRegenix, which is a spin-out from New Jersey Institute of Technology, focused on the development of a surgical implant to repair damaged cartilage. Jim also serves as a QED business advisor and steering committee member at the University City Science Center, where he provides hands-on and advisory assistance to early-stage researchers and life science companies. Prior to serving in these positions, Jim worked at Merck for more than 27 years. Among other things, he served as executive director for Merck's U.S. Diversified Brands franchise, which he built, launched, and led for the company. He received his MBA from California State University in Sacramento, California. Jim, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure. What first led you to a career in the life sciences?
Well, that's a big question. Actually, I grew up sort of in life sciences. My dad was a pharmacist, and back in the 50s, he actually left the pharmacy to join a company called Sharp & Dohme, which merged with Merck and then became Merck Sharp & Dohme.
Okay.
So I come from a family of Merck people, and so grew up seeing him out in the field, and actually went along with him when I had time off from school to visit with doctors, see patients at times, and so really began to like it quite a bit. Decided I wanted to become a dentist, but then when I got into college, after one marketing course, I suddenly realized my real love was in business. So it was focused on business, and just by timing, after I got my MBA, Merck was suddenly hiring folks in the business with MBAs that you could do a couple years in the field and then actually go into headquarters. So that's sort of a little bit more than you probably were asking how I ended up getting into it.
No,
and then 27 years later, I finally ended up departing Merck.
Well, let's stay on that for a second.
Sure.
I mean, 27 years at a company like Merck is a long time. I'm sure you held a number of positions over your time there. I was wondering if you could just tell our viewers a little bit about, what you did when you were there.
So, like I said, I really wanted to understand from the sales perspective before I ended up in management. So it was important that I found a company I could do that. I ended up spending about 4 years out in the Stanford Teaching Hospital territory out in Northern California. They wanted me only out there for a couple years, but enjoyed it so much. Came in, rotated through various positions from doing communications, supporting the marketing teams, out to the field sales folks, to train them on exactly how to use the detail aids, what were the objectives, how to drive the revenue numbers. Then moved into sales analytics and learned the whole sales analytics part, supporting all of the regional directors across the country. Then they moved me. It was a little bit like being in the military, but in a good way. And went out to the Southeast, and I had 5 states out in the Southeast, heading up the community and teaching hospital territories. Did that for about 2 years. Then they brought me in. I worked on special assignments for the executive director of field operations. Did that for about 9 months, and then went over and began to prepare to launch their osteoporosis product, Fosamax. Launched that product, created a new position within called the Market Development Associates, and then took on all of managed care supporting that particular brand. At that point declared I was going to stay in marketing. Merck tapped me on the shoulder, said we want to rebuild the hospital division. Went over, we went through multiple expansions, became the director of planning for the hospital group, and then that expanded and we took on specialty sales. So I was director of hospital and specialty sales. After a couple more years of that, then they asked me to head up the urology sales organization. Now it's time to get you the sales, pure sales leadership. So I had the country, did that for a handful of years, until Proscar went off patent, and then took on responsibility heading up the neurology organization. Did that for a handful of years. Then took on the HSA, which is our high science group, as well as all the planning and support. And then around, that brings you up to about 2008. Then I had an opportunity to report directly to the president and develop a stage gate process to evaluate white space or revenue opportunities. One of the first ones that we ended up approving was Mature Brands Group. And at the end they said, hey, there's nobody that knows it better than you. Why don't you build it and run it for us here in the U.S.? So those are a series of positions.
Well, and that's quite a lot of experience, which is really leading me to my next question. What led you to leave and move to the entrepreneurial side? And was there much of a transition in doing that?
Oh, there always is, yeah. So after we had the Mature Products or Diversified Brands Group up and going, we saw an opportunity in emerging markets. We'd built it out as much as we needed to in the U.S., so we took my headcount, redeployed it into emerging markets. I was actually going to assume another position at Merck, but because I had just turned 50, Merck was contracting, had the opportunity to actually consider a package and leave. Had 6 months basically to make a decision. During that 6 months, reached outside of Merck, talking to folks in VC, went to folks in various organizations to determine, hey, if I wanted to leave the walls of Merck, what would the earlier stage marketplace look like? And got very, very good feedback that, yeah, you could do that if that's what you want to do. And then if you don't, you can always go back to a big, pharmaceutical company. So I made that decision and didn't want to be on any boards or anything like that initially. Got directed to the Science Center, Chris Lang and company, and so went on as an advisor and began working with scientists to put together the proof of concept plans. And then that's when I really fell in love with kind of the early stage piece. And then the companies start popping up from there, because then as you're working with the universities, and if there's a good relationship there, they say, hey, how would you like to consider, launching this and do a spin out?
How did you learn about the exciting research that Dr. Cordigiri was doing at Drexel, as regards Parkinson's disease?
So with Dr. Cordigiri, there was somebody in their tech transfer group, a very passionate individual. And I had met her through the Science Center. She gave me a call, and I remember it was coming from a PA Bio morning breakfast session. And she said, Jim, I want to talk to you. Don't worry, we're not trying to do another spin out. But we've got an incredible researcher, and she has a novel breakthrough product for Parkinson's disease. We need somebody like yourself that we'll bring on as a consultant to help her put together a proof of concept plan to compete for the Coulter Drexel Award. She's already won an innovation award from Drexel. This is somebody Drexel is really, pretty big on. I said, well, let's have breakfast. I want to meet the scientist, because the scientists sometimes can be phenomenal, but sometimes they will not take feedback, or they're so busy with their lab work that you can't get them to, put things together. And I said, I don't want to get tied up with a scientist that, there's not going to be a equal relationship as we're putting together this proof of concept plan. Met her, dynamic individual, just a genius as it comes into this area. Looked at the asset or the technology that she was developing, and I said, yep, let's get going. And then as we developed the proof of concept plan, I became more and more interested, because it just so happened that while I was at Merck heading up Diversified Brands, I had Cinemet, which is the gold standard for the treatment of symptoms for Parkinson's disease. So I knew a fair amount about it. Wasn't quite sure if this was going to be breakthrough, but as we dive in, and I'll talk to a little bit more here in a minute, you'll see that it really is a novel breakthrough agent.
All right, so PolyCore Therapeutics then came out of, you know, what you've just described. How would you say that your many years of experience at Merck prepared you for, you know, the role as an entrepreneur, and in particular your role as a CEO of a company like PolyCore Therapeutics?
So in my particular situation, it prepared me well, because you heard all the positions that I had while I was there. So most of the big pharma companies train you extremely well on sort of the business process, right? Defining what the problem is, what's the unmet need, what's the potential solution, so you can determine very quickly if there's an opportunity or if it's just another Me Too product. And then the process of going out and doing customer validation to really validate what you think you've identified as a huge opportunity truly is, and will get the traction so that you can begin to de-risk it. So that piece, that was a no-brainer, right, coming from the training I'd received at Merck. The piece that wasn't, which was all new, was the whole funding piece and the setting up the company. And although, you know, here you've got these credentials from Merck, as you're working with some of these universities, they assume, oh, they know all that piece, and you have to be very transparent to say, no, don't have that piece yet. But it's something that if you're, you know, persistent, and there's a lot of folks to help you out with that, because of a very, very supportive ecosystem in the Philadelphia area, you can learn it actually very, very quickly.
So can you tell our viewers about PolyCore Therapeutics?
Sure. So, as I think they're probably getting a sense, PolyCore Therapeutics is a drug development company. Our first product that we're focused on is for the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's disease, which I'm sure most of the folks are familiar with, is a big bad disease. You got 6 million patients worldwide suffering from Parkinson's disease, 1.5 million in the US, with 60,000 new patients diagnosed every day. And when you think about Parkinson's disease and you hear about treatments, there really is nothing to treat the disease. What there is at this point are treatments to treat the symptoms of the disease. The gold standard being Sinemet, which is fabulous initially, but the problem that you run into with Sinemet is that you get this wearing off effect. And then so they have to increase the dose or increase how often they take it. And then that causes something called dyskinesias, which I'm sure everyone has seen with Michael J. Fox's involuntary movements. Well, Dr. Cordigiri specifically focused on the dopamine receptors, which there's dopamine receptor 1 all the way to dopamine receptor 5. There's nothing that's specific just to D3 dopamine receptor. And so she created this particular technology that's focused there, but also has an impact on epinephrine, norepinephrine. So you get not only the positive and equal symptom results that you would get with Sinemet, but you don't have the dyskinesias associated with it. So you're not going to have that wearing off. It'll come in a once-a-day therapy, but also with the norepinephrine effect or the net effects, it has cognitive, positive cognitive results. So one of the things with Parkinson's disease is you do have some of the cognitive impairment, and Sinemet can actually worsen that in particular situations. So it became apparent almost immediately that we were onto something here. And she'd already done the proof of concept studies in rats, and we've got investor support that want to see us further de-risk it. And we ended up, she ended up winning actually the Coulter Drexel Award, so that she could complete her preclinical studies on the brand. And we still have more to do, but we're off to a very, very fast start. And the company, as we're talking about, we're just pulling this whole thing together, and we're off to the race. So very, very exciting.
Has PolyCore developed any proprietary intellectual property?
Yeah, so the company itself has not at this point, but Drexel has done just a phenomenal job They've got a provisional patent and 2 national level patents, and they've put in for them to be for accelerated review. So they have a very robust IP portfolio at this point in time, which is we're working out the specifics with Drexel, who has been just fabulous to work with. That will all be part of the option that we'll have with PolyCore Therapeutics.
So you touched on this earlier, but what was the need that Dr. Cordigeri and you identified in the market? I mean, what's happening in the marketplace right now, and what is the need that you all think you can fill?
So the need is better treatment of symptoms.
Rather than just masking it.
This is not just another Me Too. This will take it up a notch because with the current agents that are available, patients often, along with the decision of their physician, will delay treatment. So they're having to suffer those symptoms of early stage Parkinson's disease because they don't want to start the Sinemet and then eventually have that wearing off and then have these dyskinesias.
Does it happen over weeks, months, years?
So it is a gradual process. It takes about 5 years on average before patients have those dyskinesias. But that waning off effect happens fairly quickly, and it's very patient specific.
Okay. All
right. Just staying on that for a little bit. What's the current treatment protocol or standard of care for Parkinson's patients, and how would this new drug from PolyCore fit in that where would it fit in the general standard of care?
So really the standard of care, early symptoms, they try to just have the patient manage. Once the symptoms become problematic, where they're really impacting their quality of life, they'll bring on, it could be a Sinemet, or it could be another dopamine agent that maybe not have as many of the severe dyskinesias down the road. But unfortunately, it doesn't have the same level of efficacy in treating the early symptoms. Then they'll eventually go to Sinemet or L-Dopa. And then you run into the dyskinesias. And then there's even the deep brain stimulation when nothing is working. So you kind of follow, it's sort of a process that starts and it gradually proceeds until they're in pretty bad shape. This product here, if everything goes well in the clinical trials, it would help people in all components of kind of all segments of the market. So the patients that are at the end stage right now, where they're taking the Sinemet, but also taking all these other agents for the dyskinesias, could basically reduce their dose of Sinemet, add on what we're calling PCT 3010, which is our product name, and that would reduce or eliminate the dyskinesias, but allow them the maintenance of the symptomatic relief. So that would be the end stage. The earlier stage, they could start this agent and not have to worry about the dyskinesias. And then the folks in the middle, they could adjust dose of levodopa and add on PCT 3010. So you can see it really kind of fits all buckets, and the cognitive benefits is the last piece that we'll have to better flush out as we're validating it in the market.
So for patients, so if I'm understanding it correctly, for patients at early stages, it could be the treatment,
start.
And for others at varying other stages, it would be to supplement the kinds of things that they're taking now. That's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, almost sounds too good to be true at times. So.
Being that we're a financial talk show, Jim, many of our viewers are interested in how you're funded. We've had lots of our past guests have talked about the triumphs and the struggles they've had with funding. To date, how have you been funded?
So everything has been funded at this point really through grants from the government into Dr. Cordigeri's lab. As it got closer to then doing a spin out, Drexel, she won an innovation award to do additional preclinical work, and now with the Coulter Award, it's going to allow us to do the larger animal studies. We've got other investors that are interested. We'll be submitting to the government for SBIR, small business grants, and our hopes really are to partner with some of the pharmaceutical companies, which are really, Merck included, which will, give you some seed funding without any really hooks tied to you at this point in time. Every company is a little bit different. And then eventually down the road, hopefully to help bring this product to market, we would do an early exit to one of those particular companies. So that's sort of our, path to success. And we'll have to see if we need other angel investors along the way, or if we have to go to a VC. Really depends on how we can get the strategic companies involved.
I know we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the relationship with Drexel, but you've mentioned Coulter a few times, and I know Drexel has been one of the institutions that Coulter nationwide has singled out. Can you spend just 30 seconds talking about Coulter and what they are?
So Coulter, it's interesting. This is actually through Drexel. Before I even go into that, they typically will fund sort of med device tech programs, and so this is sort of like an evergreen fund in sense.
Is it a foundation?
It's a foundation. Okay. They awarded Drexel, this program. They will have that money kind of in forever, even if something was to happen to where maybe they took the name Coulter away from the Drexel, and I'm not saying that that's anything that would happen, but so that is a huge opportunity that Drexel has. Very similar to QED, they run a program once a year where for their high opportunity technologies, they submit a proposal. They narrow it down to, approximately, I think, 10 finalists. And then within those finalists, the committee, you have to go and present your proof of concept plan. And then they make a decision very quickly to actually fund your technology. And they offer opportunities for follow-up funding as well. So great program.
Well, I think that's perfect, because I think we're just about out of time. So we had a couple more questions, but we'll reserve that for another time.
Sure.
Maybe we can have you back again. I'd like to thank our special guest this evening, Jim Harris. Jim, you were terrific, and I really appreciate it. My co-host, Charlie Huntington. Charlie, thank you. You were great as well. I want to remind our viewers that the next guest on Money Matters TV is an artist, Chantel Westby of Westby Art. Money Matters is now available as an audible podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters the Podcast for mobile devices. The video is available on our YouTube channel as well as on the website. Thank you all for watching this evening, and we'll see you again next time.